Welcome to Dialogue with Deidre. I'm your host, Deidre Malone. You know that I always have exciting guests on our show every Monday and Wednesday at noon. And today, I'm telling you, it's going to be a treat. Jocelyn Wurzburg, you've probably heard of her. She's been around specifically in Tennessee for a while. Civil rights activist. She has been on the front line fighting for civil rights. We're going to talk to her about her experience associated with civil rights as a part of Black History Month. We're also going to talk to her because she is an attorney by trade, but her business now focuses on mediation services. And there are a lot of people out there who, rather than go to court and go through that expensive process of going through a trial, you may want to have mediation, and we're going to learn a lot about that today. That's in our first half hour of the show. The second half hour of their show, we have someone who is in Memphis today and tomorrow, making the rounds, talking about his former life as a drug dealer. He used to make $20,000 in a day. He's turned his life around, and now he is an advocate for youth, trying to make sure that they don't make the mistakes that he made when he was coming up. He's an author. He's a motivational speaker. Kevin Shird is going to be on our show in the second half hour of Dialogue with Deidre. And if you want to ask either one of them a question, you know how to reach out on the Dialogue with Deidre Facebook page. Post a question there, and we will ask them on the show. Or you can email me directly at deidre@deidremalone.com. We'll be back. You don't want to miss this show.
So they say it's a man's world? I don't see anybody's name on it.
While they were doing their thing, we slowly changed our world.
Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
Hello, friends. I'm concerned about the health of our African American community. According to the American Heart Association, our rates of high blood pressure in the U.S. are among the highest in the world. And diabetes, obesity, high cholesterol, physical inactivity, poor nutrition, and smoking are causing us to suffer and die from stroke at alarming rates. In 3 John 2, the Bible says, "Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers." Visit powertoendstroke.org and become empowered to take care of your health. You are the power to end stroke.
Wow, tell around your drugstore, and your drugstore. Hey, we everyone's drugstore. And we're located at 3333 East Chevy Drive, 794-3690. All medical plans. We support supported living, assisted living. We do it all. And guess what? We even have a $4 plan. Hey, call to ask Dr. Brown about that. I gotta go because she's coming with those boots.
The Carter Malone Group is a full-service public relations agency. Celebrating 10 years of being in business, the Carter Malone Group is located in Midtown Memphis and represents clients across the country. No matter what size your business, if you are interested in promoting your product or service and increasing your market share, contact the firm that can help you meet your goals. The Carter Malone Group. Call 901-278-0881 today.
And now, let's take some questions from the public.
Mr. Chairman, why do we keep cutting back on education?
Governor, you want to take that question?
Mr. Chairman, let's give this one to the Senate Majority Leader.
Since this matter was taken up in AB 3712, I think it best if I defer to the Assembly Majority Leader.
Actually, pursuant to Department of Education statutes, the State Secretary of Education would be more qualified to answer. Mr. Secretary.
My legal team has advised me not to comment at this time, so I'll humbly refer to our State Superintendent of Schools.
Pass. Definitely pass. Okay, County Superintendent.
Well, young lady, it's just too complicated.
Can you tell me who's responsible for my education?
That is a good question. Governor?
Repeat the question, please.
I don't see why I can't get an answer from
You're asking a lot of difficult questions.
Oh, she sure is.
Who are you?
Well, I'm the governor.
What is this?
Your 2 minutes are up.
Stop the circus. Contact your legislators at thisbudgetblows.com.
Dialogue with Deidre. I'm your host, Deidre Malone. In this half hour of the show, Jocelyn Wurzburg. Wurzburg. We're going to get it right, Jocelyn. Is my guest. And Jocelyn, talk to me about your time in the civil rights movement. As a part of Black History Month, I always want to have someone on who was integral to that part of our history. And so I know that, you know, you were a civil rights activist, but you also human rights activist. You know, you served on the Tennessee Human Rights Commission. You've also served on the American Legislative Exchange Council. Are you still on ALEC?
No. ALEC, in fact, I'm very concerned that this ALEC organization is now controlling more state legislatures. Mm-hmm. This ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council, is a very far-right political group that is dropping what are called model codes. This is legislation being written and drafted for conservative legislations across the country. There are about 30 state houses now that are conservative controlled with one or both houses. And this ALEC organization has forwarded in many states voter ID, mm-hmm. stand your ground laws, right. Laws pertaining to in court summary judgments that it's in favor of the defendant instead of the plaintiff. The defendant had the burden to not go forward with a case, and the plaintiff had an easier burden. Now they're trying to reverse that, so that if you have a case and you're the plaintiff, and let's say it's an accident case, you have a burden of proof in what's called summary judgment of the judge letting the case come to court, okay. Instead of it used to be the other way around. Anyway, this ALEC is They are for the legislators, beautiful trips and wonderful places, and draft their legislations for them, and then gets the Koch brothers
Money
to pay for their campaigns. And so our legislatures, and now Tennessee's one of them, they're not working for us. They're working for ALEC, and they're working for the Kochs. I mean, it's become something I'm extremely concerned and worried about.
And what are some of the legislative issues? For example, I'm sure charter schools might be one, or an education agenda.
You know, I guess we all need to go on their website and see what their issue du jour is, but I can promise you it's probably not going to be one that I'm going to be supportive of.
And it's probably one that's not supportive of, you know, the average working person, I would think.
Well, you're right. And we have an issue today where if you count the number of votes for, say, Democrat legislatures, they're far and beyond in the majority. But the way the districts have been drawn, and ALEC has been a part of that, most of these conservative legislatures around the country are like 75%. The districts are going conservative, where the vote actually went majority for, let's say, Democrats as opposed. And of course, we got this issue that these districts are there until 2020.
That's right.
And then in 2020, who redraws the districts? The current legislatures. So there's going to be lawsuits all over the place saying these gerrymandered lines aren't fair. And then what ALEC is really interested in is the electoral votes for president should be assigned on the basis of these districts and not, for example, the state going a certain candidate, then all the electoral votes go that way. They're going to want a proportional, and the districts are in the majority, not the people, but the districts. So this is something we need to worry about.
We need to worry about and pay attention to.
And it's affecting civil rights. One of Alex's concern is they want discrimination to be judged on intent. Now, do we have a minute now?
Yes,
I'll go into a little history.
Yes.
I usually put this on a chart, but I'll try and do it by conversation. Definition of discrimination has evolved over the last 50, 60 years. You originally had what was called evil intent. And evil intent was black and white water fountains, colored need not apply. It was actual intentional segregation and discrimination, Jim Crow.
Right.
Okay. And the remedy for evil intent is to quit acting with evil intent. Okay. Then the next definition became what was called unequal treatment. You don't pay a woman the same thing you pay a man.
That's still in place
well,
today.
Isn't that the truth? What was it now? Well, when I was younger, it was 62 cents on the dollar women earned compared to men. Now it's 78 cents. So we're
just moved a little.
We're getting better, I guess. But anyway, and unequal treatment. The remedy for unequal treatment was equal treatment. Pay a woman the same thing you pay a man. All right. But then the women's movement said, wait a minute, maybe it's not equal pay for equal work, but equal pay for work of equal value. When you think about dog catchers made more money than nursery school teachers. I mean, and something's wrong with that picture for sure. Okay. Then the definition of discrimination went to sometimes you have equal treatment, but the results are unequal. For example, and the famous case about that was one called Griggs v. Duke Power. Mr. Willie Griggs was an expert forklift truck driver, but he didn't have a high school diploma. And he applied for a job with Duke Power Company in North Carolina, and they had a rule, you couldn't come work for us unless you had a high school diploma. Well, he'd been about a 15, 16-year forklift truck driver and felt like something wasn't right with that.
Right.
And the Supreme Court, actually under Berger, who was conservative, agreed with him and said that sometimes you have a rule like everybody has to have a high school diploma, where in North Carolina, mostly black folk couldn't get a high school diploma because they had to go out and
work,
pick tobacco,
exactly.
plant tobacco, chop tobacco, anyway. And so they didn't have high school diplomas in the same percentage numbers of whites. And so the Supreme Court said, and it was interesting, that if you have a rule that's applied equally, but the results are so askewed as to be very unequal, you need to be taking a look to see whether or not that equal application of a qualification is fair. And in this case, there was no relationship. It had to be what's called a BFOQ, a bona fide qualification. There was no real relationship between a high school diploma and forklift truck driving.
Right.
And so the remedy for equal treatment with unequal results, the remedy is remedial measures to overcome the present effects of past discrimination. So affirmative action was born to affirmatively act to overcome the present effects of past discrimination. And the only reason I went into all that is to say that our legislatures, one by one, are claiming in their states fair employment practices, for example, of their human rights or civil rights commissions. They want you to go back to intent.
Rather than affirmative action.
Rather than remedial measures. And so if you go back to intent, how are you supposed to be able to read the mind of some employer who doesn't have any minorities in their firm? How do you know why he doesn't have that? You can't get in his brain to know whether or not it's because he doesn't like black folk or something, you know.
Right.
So intent is where these various legislatures are trying to take us back. In other words, it's going to take all of civil rights law, anti-discrimination law, and just back to the beginning. And it's frightening for me and very scary.
Oh, I'm sure it is. No, that was good because our viewers need to understand it.
Well, that's where we are.
Okay. And so, in your opinion, what do we need to do to try and combat it?
Well, for one thing, we can't sit and not vote.
Exactly.
In some elections, we just can't get out and vote for president and don't vote down the ballot.
But that's what we do.
You have got to show up at the polls. I mean, this is a democracy, and if you don't exercise your votes, and young kids, I'm talking to you, if anyone's watching this thing, you're the worst culprits. You don't vote. You complain a lot.
Yeah, and you don't vote.
But you don't vote.
Jossie, this last election, when I was out campaigning, I would say to young folk that you don't have a problem going out when it's time to vote for President Obama. But what you need to understand is your local elections have a great deal of impact on your life today.
Absolutely.
And so when I would explain it to them that way, they would say, well, we didn't even think about the fact that it impacts education, it impacts health care, that we take advantage
Everything.
of here.
Well, look
locally.
what Tennessee just did. It was a no-brainer.
Insure Tennessee.
I mean, and the fault lies and with the governor who didn't like Kentucky on day one say, I'm in.
Right.
He pussyfooted around and waited till the legislature got in, and then they passed a law that says you can't do it without our permission. And he should have just said yes.
Right.
I mean, Tennessee needed that desperately.
And let me just say, if I were a billionaire, I wouldn't be afraid. I would be challenging them to do the right thing, because it's not just about West Tennessee, which they always want to say West Tennessee is the burden. It's about poor people and middle-class people who don't have insurance in some of these rural parts of our state.
Oh, I got family from Brownsville. They're worried the hospital's not going to survive.
Exactly.
It is a tremendous rethinking of this country that has me so concerned and scared. I don't know where this mean-spiritedness has come. It's like a resentment. Well, I do know where it came from.
I
It
do
came from
too.
the Southern Strategy.
Exactly.
We're going back to Reagan's
It
time with
does.
Lee Atwater.
It comes from people believing that African Americans or minorities have been given something, been given something that they don't deserve in terms of with affirmative action. Oh, we're just going to hire somebody minority because they're minority, but.
Oh, no, it never required. Affirmative action never required hiring someone who couldn't do the job.
Exactly. You have to be.
You had to be qualified. But
Jocelyn, the mindset.
Well,
that's what I'm going
and
to.
the resentment. And your
Exactly.
next speaker is going to talk, I'm sure, about how that Southern strategy and put a layer of the war on drugs on top of that.
Exactly.
What did that mean? That meant the war on drugs was against black and brown people. Last night, the Academy Awards, I think it was Mr. Legend, or whoever he was with, was saying that there are more black males under correction control today than there were black males in slavery. Now, of course, there are more people is the answer to that, but that's not the point. The point is the whole idea of pitting poor white people against minorities when minorities recovered from Jim Crow and then tried to get into the workforce and into the schools and into your neighborhoods and everything. You put that political Southern strategy on that, and all this. We all know Happy Jones. She made me read this book. She made me read this book, The New Jim Crow, by Michelle Alexander, and it talks about how when we got rid of slavery, then we came up with Jim Crow, and then we got rid of Jim Crow. Then we've come up with really the war on drugs in order to keep black folk down. And when a husband goes into jail, it's the wife and the children who suffer.
Exactly. And you think about it, had a conversation with Ed Stanton. I had him on the show. And Ed and I were talking about the fact that some of the drug laws that are, for just cocaine in general, in comparison to crack. I mean,
sure.
You had a lot of black folks being locked up for...
And marijuana.
And marijuana, too.
The statistics are that, well, I'm sure your next speaker is going to talk
we'll
about
talk about
that.
that. What I want to talk to you about, though, is the Tennessee Human Rights Commission, and then I want to talk a little bit about your mediation business before we let you get off the show, okay? Talk to me about your experience with the Tennessee Human Rights Commission.
Well, actually, I was appointed back in 1972 for the first time by Governor Winfield Dunn. I used to be, even after I got involved in civil rights, I used to be what I called a liberal Republican. And I heard Arthur Fletcher once, who was head of the Civil Rights Commission, say, I'm a liberal Republican because the line is shorter. Anyway, so before I converted, I was appointed by Winfield Dunn and got on this commission, and it had voluntary compliance. And as the kids would say today, how's that working for you? Well, it wasn't very well. So I went about the business of drafting a law, and it became Tennessee's first anti-discrimination law in employment and public accommodations. And then I later added housing to it a number of years later. And it took about, I think 6 years to pass the legislature. And I lobbied for it the first couple of years, and then I went to law school, so I didn't have a chance to do that anymore. But
why did it take so long?
Well, there was a big debate. Why would you want a state law when there was already Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act? Well, one of the reasons we wanted a state law is federal law, you had to have 15 or more employees. State law, you only had to have 8 or more employees. And I was trying to sell it as a states' rights bill. Who do you want enforcing you, the state or the feds? And that didn't fly so well. But anyway, truth be known, it got traded for a trucking weight bill, and it finally passed.
Government.
Senator Yvonne Williams was our sponsor. That's a long story. That's fun, I'll tell you sometime. But when he called me and he said, Mrs. Wurzburg, I want you to know that your legislation has finally passed the Tennessee legislature. And I went, oh, Mr. Williams, I'm so excited. I'm just sorry I wasn't there to hear you debate it. He said, there wasn't any debate. I traded it for a trucking weight bill. And I said, well, okay, that's good. Anyway, so it limped along when it finally passed for lack of money and good enforcement. And Governor Bredesen asked me to serve again on it. This time it was, 2005, I guess. And so it was a thrill getting to serve again on a commission whose purpose was to enforce a law that I had written 30 years prior. So it was really exciting for me to serve again, and it works. It's a good commission. It has Beverly Watts, who you need to have sometime.
Yes,
Beverly
yes.
is a great person she's the director of it, and she's got it running right. Now what we have to do is overcome these current legislative moves to try and kill it. They've just reduced it from 15 commissioners down to 9, and the legislature gets to appoint 4 of the 9 instead of the governor appointing all of them.
And is that new?
That's brand new. That's
more and more encroachment on.
That's more and more encroachment on civil rights and human rights.
Exactly.
And so, anyway, I went to law school because I was excited about writing legislation. I wanted to be a Title VII plaintiff's lawyer, but I didn't get to do that. And got a job at a law firm, and they wanted me to do their other problems, which turned out to be divorces. And so I got into the divorce field, and after my first 4 trials, I said, there's got to be a better way than this.
Mediation.
So I went to take a course in mediation, and that's been my life's work since then. Still try and stay involved in civil rights and human rights where I can.
So mediation, I mean, are more and more people moving to that?
Oh yeah, now everybody's a mediator too. I even teach.
You were the first in Memphis. You were the first professional mediator in Memphis.
And I teach mediation now. To competition, I don't know why. Because I want it done right. I want it done right. I want it done right, and it's not being done right all too often. Mediation is just a wonderful way of conflict resolution. And by the way, I used to teach it to kids. I taught in every Shelby County high school and junior high.
That's wonderful.
Oh,
We need that. We need more of that today.
Absolutely. My dream is to teach gangs, and I've got an associate who would fit right in with the guys, and I would love to teach gangs.
We might be able to help you with that.
Well, we need to talk about
We
that.
can
I've
talk
dropped
about
the
that.
hint to folks in government, but nobody's taken me up on it.
We've got a news conference on Wednesday. It's a motorcycle. Organizations are building safe houses in South Memphis, and a part of that is conflict resolution for gangs. And so
Well,
we might need
seriously,
to have a conversation with you about that.
In fact, I mediated about 15 motorcycle, all women.
Oh, really?
All African American women bikers. And they had a conflict and had all 15 in the room, and we mediated it. Let me tell you why mediation is really great. There are some conflicts that we call distributive. That's money. You pay and you're through and you don't see each other again. But most conflicts are between people who would like a continued relationship after the conflict's resolved. Well, if you have a knockdown, drag-out lawsuit, you're not going to have a continued relationship. And when that relationship means parents of children they had together, they have got to have a continued relationship when the dispute or the divorce is finished. And so if you can help them resolve all the conflicts, or in my case, divorce mediation, come up with all the terms of the divorce, and then work out a way of co-parenting the kids almost as well living apart as they did together, then mediation is useful. And those are called transactional disputes. Disputes where the parties would like a relationship, and that could be a vendor-vendee or a landlord-tenant or employer-employee. I do a lot of work with the Postal Service. because they're going to have continued relationships. They just want the conflict resolved in a peaceful way. So anyway, it's been a circuitous route that started for me actually with the death of Martin Luther King here in my city. Got me into human rights, anti-prejudice business that led into civil rights, and whereas prejudice deals with individual racism, sexism, something, it's the institutions that you really got to work on, and that's where civil rights comes in. So.
I'm telling you, it's the circle. It's
yes,
just a circle.
It is. It's been for me.
And Jocelyn, what we want to do is we want to have you come back. And finish this conversation because we really could go a whole hour.
I'm sorry.
No. I'm excited. No, I'm excited about it. But we're going to have you come back. Dawn's going to schedule it because we need to continue this conversation. And I want to plead with my audience to post their questions for Jocelyn. And what we'll do is I'm going to get those questions to her and she'll respond. And we'll post them.
Great. Be happy
so we look forward to it. So Jocelyn, we want you to come back. Is there anything you want to share with our audience before you get out of here?
Well, just vote. Vote. It's important.
It's important. It's important. And if you need mediation.
Absolutely. I'm your woman.
Okay. So when we come back, we promised you that we'd have a conversation with Kevin Shird. He's here in town meeting with some of our youth. And we want to talk about his life experience. He has a book, and it's probably one you're going to want to read. When we come back, you're watching Dialogue with Deidre.
Oh, fun.
So they say it's a man's world? I don't see anybody's name on it.
While they were doing their thing, we slowly changed ours.
Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
Keeping your heart healthy. Things you should do is you should always go for your annual exams. Go to your doctor, get a checkup. Make sure everything is functioning properly with your heart. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself as a whole. Cutting back on the salt, cutting back on the fatty things that you eat. Just everything that you intake. Be mindful of the things that you're putting inside your body because that is your body. Just keeping yourself healthy. And a lot of black men don't realize they do need to go to the doctor. They do need checkups. They do need to make sure that everything is working on them properly because when they don't, that's when they go to the doctor because they were in a car accident or whatever happened and they ended up having to go to the doctor. And that's when they find out things are wrong. They find out they have high blood pressure. They have kidney problems. So now you need dialysis now because you didn't know this or your heart is enlarged. Those are all things that could have been prevented with a checkup once a year. So be healthy. Think of your heart. Be healthy. That's all I can say. I mean, can't stress it enough. Black men just don't want to go to the doctor, and you really need to. It's very important.
Hello, friends. I'm concerned about the health of our African American community. According to the American Heart Association, our rates of high blood pressure in the U.S. are among the highest in the world. And diabetes, obesity, high cholesterol, physical inactivity, poor nutrition, and smoking are causing us to suffer and die from stroke at alarming rates. In 3 John 2, the Bible says, "Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers." Visit powertoendstroke.org and become empowered to take care of your health. You are the power to end stroke.
Wow, tell Brown, your drugstore, and your drugstore. Hey, we everyone's drugstore. And we're located at 3333 East Chevy Drive, 794-3690. All medical plans. We support supported living, assisted living. We do it all. And guess what? We even have a $4 plan. Hey, call to ask Dr. Brown about that. I gotta go because she's coming with those boots.
The Carter Malone Group is a full-service public relations agency. Celebrating 10 years of being in business, the Carter Malone Group is located in Midtown Memphis and represents clients across the country. No matter what size your business, if you are interested in promoting your product or service and increasing your market share, contact the firm that can help you meet your goals. The Carter Malone Group. Call 901-278-0881 today.
And now let's take some questions from the public.
Mr. Chairman, why do we keep cutting back on education?
Governor, you want to take that question?
Mr. Chairman, let's give this one to the Senate Majority Leader.
Since this matter was taken up in AB 3712, I think it best if I defer to the Assembly Majority Leader.
Actually, pursuant to Department of Education statutes, the State Secretary of Education would be more qualified to answer. Mr. Secretary.
My legal team has advised me not to comment at this time, so I'll humbly refer to our state superintendent of schools.
Pass. Definitely pass. Okay, county superintendent.
Well, young lady, it's just too complicated.
Can you tell me who's responsible for my education?
That is a good question. Governor?
Repeat the question, please.
I don't see why I can't get an answer from
You're asking a lot of difficult questions.
Oh, she sure is.
Who are you?
Well, I'm the governor.
What is this?
Your 2 minutes are up.
Stop the circus. Contact your legislators at thisbudgetblows.com.
Dialogue with Deidre. I'm your host, Deidre Malone. Excited about Kevin Shird being in my studio. Welcome to Memphis.
How are you?
I'm good. Look, Dr. Theresa Kumabwa is a good friend of mine, and she has a heck of a schedule for you.
Wow, yeah.
I mean, you're going to speak to students at Job Corps.
Right.
You're going to speak to students at Hume's Preparatory Academy, Lemoyne Owen College, Soulsville. I know you've heard of Stax Museums.
Absolutely. I'm excited about it.
I'm telling you, you've got a busy schedule, but I'm glad you're here, and you're here first on Dialogue with
Thank
Deidre.
You. I appreciate it.
So let's talk about the fact that you're a national youth advocate, you're a public speaker, humanitarian, author, but I want to talk about, before we get there, how did you get there? Where'd you come from?
Wow, it's been a long journey. So fasten your seatbelts. This ride has been crazy. I started dealing drugs at age 16. In Baltimore, and ironically, by age 23, I was making $20,000 a day on the street corner in Baltimore.
That's big money.
It's big money, but then we call there's a lot of devastation involved in that. There's a lot of It's never good to poison other people with illegal drugs.
Exactly.
And so we made a lot of money, but we did a lot of bad things. And so, 12 years in prison, that's got me to this point where, I wrote this book a few years ago, and I had no idea this book was going to explode the way it has. Yeah, you got a copy of it,
Lessons
right?
of Redemption.
Lessons of Redemption, that's it.
This is it.
Yeah. And so it's funny because I actually wrote this book. It was actually therapeutic for me. I started writing, and I started writing stuff, and I was like, wow, I actually did that. And this was after I was released from prison.
You didn't do it while you were there?
No,
because you had some time.
I had a lot of time, to get my head on straight and understand the problems that I caused myself and the bad decisions that I made, right? Of even getting involved in the drug game. Right. So that's what I talk to kids about today, is about making bad decisions. Because you can make a decision today that can affect you 20, 30 years from now. And so it's important to just make good decisions. And me getting involved in the drug game was a bad decision. However, you look at today, and I've been able to use that as a way to reach, a lot of people with my story, but not just my story. It's the story of many young African American men across this country. And how do we get in that situation? Because, once you get involved in the criminal justice system, you're not in a good place. You're in a very vulnerable and dangerous space. And so it's just not a good thing to get in that place at all. And so that's what I talk about in the book.
Okay, and then the lessons. What are some of the lessons that you've learned to get you to the redemption point? If it was what's the number one lesson that you try and educate young folk on in terms of not going down the road that you went down?
I think it's just making positive choices. Okay. That's the number one. However, there's about 10 more that we can talk about. I think choices. You have control over a lot that goes on in your life, right? And so that's why it's very important to make good choices when that time comes. When you're in control, that's the period that you can make good choices that can affect you for years to come.
It's hard. I can imagine, all of us have relatives that have been, either drug dealers, touched by drugs in some capacity.
Right.
And I think about, the young man or the young woman on the corner right now whose mom or dad may be incarcerated, mom may be on drugs, and, they may be the oldest in the family, trying to figure out how to take care of the family. And the drug game is an easy one for them.
It's an easy one. And I was that kid.
Right.
So my father was chronically alcohol addicted. I mean, chronic addiction, where I would come home from school in elementary school and my father would be laid out in the street, right? As a kid, I didn't know how to process that, right? So I did everything bad and made that the excuse of why I didn't do something good. However, I mean, even that, so I travel the country now speaking in colleges and speaking with kids. We got some phenomenal kids around this country doing some amazing stuff that come from some really tough circumstances, like crack addicted mothers, like heroin addicted fathers, right? All kinds of abuse. They're in colleges right now. They're looking to make some great things out of their life. They come from the same circumstance. So even when you're in that situation, it's just even more important to make a positive decision. Because at the end of the day, you will be hopefully 30 years old one day. You will be 40 years old one day. You will be 50 years old one day, hopefully. And so you're in a tough spot right now, but you still have to think about later on, what happens later on. Out there in the streets, and I remember being in the streets, we had this kind of, I call it the I'm next syndrome. You don't even think about tomorrow. You're not thinking about 10 years from now. You're not thinking about a 401k, right? You're not thinking about retirement, because you feel I'll probably be dead tomorrow. My homeboy just died. My homeboy just got shot up. My other man just got life in prison. So I'm next. So in the book, I call it the I'm next syndrome. However, I had the I'm next syndrome, and then I looked up, and next thing you know, I'm 30 years old. In prison. Next thing you know, I'm 35 years old, right? And so I never planned for the future because I always thought I was next. And so even in that circumstance, you still have to make some choices that understand that I may have a life later on. What am I going to do with it? Because even I could have made the same excuse when I got out of prison after doing almost 12 years. I have so many reasons why I could have just laid down.
Right.
Right? I could have just got out the system, the white man, the government, my mother, my father, my girlfriend left me.
Make an excuse, right?
I could have made all kinds of excuses, and I chose not to do that because, you know, I had a daughter out here that I had to live for, right? And you just got to find that thing, like, that gets you going. And I always tell people, you got to find, everybody's got that thing that keeps them going. You got to find that thing that keeps you going.
See, now that's powerful, because that is what I wanted to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after you got out of prison, I'm sure it was difficult. It's hard to get a job.
Oh, yeah.
You know, people are looking at you. They don't want to hire you.
Absolutely.
So what do you say to that brother and sister? I guess they need to find that thing to keep them, you know, keep them going.
Well, you got to find that thing, but then the other thing is that you have options, and your options are limited. I didn't want to die.
Right.
I didn't want to be shot, right? I didn't want to go back to prison. So those are still options, right? At the end of the day, they're not great options. They're still options.
Right.
And so I chose to work as hard as I could work and continue to just grind. And through that process, there were so many situations where I could have just went back into the drug game, right? I was making 20 grand a day. You know what I mean? I don't know how to work at McDonald's. I don't know how to flip burgers.
Right.
But I had to make a choice. Flipping burgers is better than flipping burgers in that penitentiary.
Say that one more time, because I think a lot of people don't understand that.
Because right, and that's why I talk about choices and options, right? Because I had an option of going back in the streets, but you know what? This one thing, I remember this guy in the joint. He had a life sentence, and we used to talk, you know, all the time, every day. We used to have conversations, and he said to me, he said, "Kevin, I know what's wrong with you." And I said, "Okay, oh yeah, what's wrong with me?"
Right.
Right. He said, "You like putting your life in other people's hands." I said, "What?" He said, "You like putting your life in other people's hands." So you know when somebody has got you, like they say that thing that really just gets you, and so he had me, and I'm like, oh my God, whatever, man. I swear to you, 10 years ago, that was 10 years ago, I have not forgotten that conversation, right? I chose not to put my life in another man's hands, because when you get in the drug game, you're putting your life in somebody else's hands. You're asking this person, here's my life, do what you want with it.
Right.
You going to snitch on me, you're going to kill me, you're going to rob me, you're going to do whatever. Here's my life, take care of it.
Right.
I'm not willing to put my life in nobody else's hands no more.
That's a good message. That's a good message.
And so that's, you know, growing up with an addicted parent and growing up in poverty and growing up in, it's tough, and if we had a choice, no, we wouldn't want to be in that circumstance. But guess what? There's some worse things out here, and the penitentiary is one of them.
Did you ever think you'd be an author?
You know, it was funny because sometimes I would meet people and I would tell them my story, and oh man, you should write a book about that. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to write no book like. And honestly, one day I was just trying to I was in search of something, but I knew I had this monkey on my back called 12 years in the penitentiary. You know, 12 years of dealing drugs in the streets, the stuff that I've witnessed and saw. How do you get this monkey off your back? And writing became my way of getting this monkey off my back. So I started writing out the pain, right? And when I wrote about the pain of my father's addiction, I wrote about the pain of a friend of mine being murdered after another friend of mine told me he was going to kill him, and I didn't take it seriously, and he went and actually did it. Just writing this stuff out, writing about being in the penitentiary and receiving letters from my daughter saying, "Daddy, when you coming home?" And I can't even answer that question because she can't even comprehend those years.
Right.
Right? So writing became a way of me just writing out the pain. And now the pain has turned into something else that I'm just really grateful to have.
Well, and it's a story that you can share with others who might be on the path that you were down or thinking about the path that you went down. It might be something that will make them stop and think, right?
Right.
About maybe I don't want to go down this road.
And that's the hope, because, you know, what I've experienced in the last 10 years, if money is your motivation, that's okay. This is America.
Right.
Make $1 million, make $1 billion, get rich. I want you to get rich. I just don't want you selling dope, right?
Right.
And there's so many opportunities where you can do great stuff. Technology, coding, healthcare. You know, I've traveled this country going to HBCUs, colleges, and I've met black kids all over this country doing amazing stuff. And I look at them like, wow, why didn't I think of that back in the day, right? But I wanted to sell dope because I thought that would be the end all, the be all. Now I'm selling books.
And that's a good thing.
And that's a good thing, right? But again, you can, if money is your motivation, there's a lot of ways to make money around this country. This is America. You got people swimming across the straits or whatever to get here to make money. Want to be an American.
Mm-hmm. And some of them do extremely well once they get here. And
they do great.
And we're here. And we're born here. And we don't take advantage of a lot of the opportunities.
You got tons of opportunities to do stuff. I don't want you to die.
Right.
I don't want you to end up in a penitentiary. I don't want you to end up with a criminal record, because we all know once you get that, now your options are even less available. And so, you know, we know people grow up in tough situations, but we also got to understand, how do you navigate that space? And that's that's what I try to talk to kids about.
You got any more books in you?
You know, I'm simultaneously writing my second and third manuscript.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because like this story will come to me and I'll put that down, and another story will come. But then I'm working with a lady out in San Francisco. We've got some big plans. So
Good.
Yeah, it's the beginning of something just incredible.
Well, I'm hoping you think this might come to the big screen.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Working on it?
Maybe part of that movie will be the interview that I had with you.
Exactly.
About the book and my visit to Memphis with Lemoyne-Owen College and Memphis, University of Memphis, just amazing partners, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're here. University of Memphis is they're doing great work, and I'm so glad that they were able to bring you here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because you do have a story to tell, and with the makeup of our city and a lot of the challenges that our young folk have, you know, in terms of, you know, gang activity, you know, the drug game here in Memphis. I think you have a compelling story, and I'm so glad that the University of Memphis brought you here to share it.
No, I'm absolutely excited to be here. We got to have a conversation about the black-on-black violence at some point in this country. We've got, you know, so many, 2 million people in prison in America, which is crazy, more than any other country in the world. 40% of that 2 million are actually African American men and women, which is incredible. And I'm a numbers guy. I always have been.
Well, to be in the game you were in, you gotta be a numbers guy.
Right. But to have 13% of the national population, African American, 13% of the American population, but 40% of the prison population. Something's wrong with those numbers, right? And so we gotta do some work to fix that. And then the other thing is the black-on-black violence, right? We gotta stop killing each other, right? Because this is a major issue, not just in Memphis, but all across American cities.
But you know, I've talked to people about this issue, and I think it's an economics issue, and it's an education issue. I think that if we, do a better job of educating our children, right, preparing them for job opportunities, and allowing them to have an equal playing field, because let me just say, sometimes they still don't have it when it comes to the whole HR piece of it. A lot of us have experienced discrimination at that level. But when there's a better equal playing field, I think that we'll have less of us incarcerated, less of us, making poor decisions.
I agree with you 100%. And I agree with you on that. Totally. I think the other part that we have to throw in there is that we have a lot of people that are in pain.
Yeah.
Right? And so that pain manifests itself in violence. Yeah. Right? The guy wants to kill you because you looked at him. The guy wants to kill you because you stepped on his feet. And from my experience, a lot of that is internal pain, and then you became the recipient of that pain.
Exactly.
Right. And so, the mental health stuff we also have to really take a look at. So, it's a host of issues that just have to be addressed, and we can't be afraid to address them.
We gotta be able to talk about it.
We can't be shy to address them. I always tell people when I started doing the work with substance abuse, that's when I started understanding mental health as it relates to substance abuse, because there is no substance abuse without mental health.
Right.
If you're using a substance, you're going to be affected in some way. Your mental health is going to be affected some way. Either it's acute or more serious stuff. And so that's when I started understanding the effects of mental health, right, on the community, but also understanding that a lot of our people that are in pain because of their poverty, right, because of their frustration of their circumstances, right. In some cases, substance abuse is involved, like alcohol or drugs.
Right.
But a lot of that violence manifests is out of pain. Right, and so we have to be able to have that conversation too.
And and then we have to also deal, I think, Kevin, with the fact that specifically for our young African American men and women, we have to figure out how to help build their self-esteem.
Right.
Because a lot of them just don't think that they're capable, don't because of the circumstances, how they grew up. I come from a family. My dad died when I was 13. My mom, who had not worked outside of the home, had to go out and take care of like 5 kids, right? Wow. And so we were prone to have low self-esteem. Yeah. Because she, was just trying to make ends meet, But if it wasn't for that village, which was our grandparents, who were there helping provide. We've got to get back, I think, to the village mentality of, we are our brothers and sisters keepers.
Right.
We just do, I think.
Right. I agree with you on that. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that, again, a lot of us are dealing with pain from just different issues. And so we have to be able to address that because, again, it manifests itself in violence. It manifests itself in substance abuse.
It does.
Right? Because a lot of us try to cover up that pain with alcohol and other drugs, right?
Right.
So that's just a conversation that we just have to have at some point.
Well, look, I'm so glad you were able to be on
Thank
our
you for the
show.
invitation.
And let me just say, you need to go to Amazon, go to the bookstore and get the book. He is in town tonight. Tonight he's at Job Corps, right? Meeting with the students at Job Corps.
Tonight, Job Corps,
and then
tomorrow we're at the university, at the college.
Lemoyne College.
College, yeah, and that's going to be big. I'm excited. I can't wait. I'm really excited.
Students there. We hope that you show up. And general public, can general public come and meet him? We want the general public to come out and see what you're talking
make
about.
Some noise, get pumped up, get
exactly.
excited.
And then you're going to be tomorrow at Hume's Preparatory Academy. I'm very fond of the principal over there.
Okay. Well, tell him
my
I'm
baby
on my way.
Sister.
I'm on my way.
Okay. So the scholars over there are excited about you coming, as well as the Soulsville Academy scholars.
All right.
They're excited. So if you have an opportunity to see Kevin Shird, you need to see him while he's in Memphis. He has a message that he's going to share with you, and you're going to want to hear it. You're going to want to read his book as well. So, Kevin, the next time you're in Memphis, promise me you're going to come back.
Soon, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
all right.
I fell in love with the hot wings last night. I ordered some hot wings. They're like the best hot wings I ever had. They were so good. I got to come back.
Come back for the
Just
hot
for the
wings.
hot wings that we have.
And look, and then barbecue. But we're trying to get people to eat healthier, but barbecue is okay too, okay?
All right.
All right, so I hope that you've enjoyed our show. If you have questions for Kevin, please post them on the Dialogue with Deidre Facebook page or email me at deidre@deidremalone.com. What we will do is, I know his people, so I will make sure that he gets those questions, and we will take his responses and we'll post them on the Dialogue with Deidre Facebook page. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. We hope you enjoyed our show.